there's something that's going around, and I find out that as much as y'all look at stuff, there's a lot of stuff y'all don't. I figure y'all know stuff I don't. The Reddit deal.
About the GameStop?
The stuff, yeah. Okay. There's a lot of stuff I can explain, and there's a lot of stuff I can't explain. I have a basic understanding of the stock market. So, why do people buy stocks? To make money off of it. So people are buying stocks. I know y'all ain't interested in this, but this is going to have a huge impact on your life, whether you're involved in it or not. Because we're all involved in it, whether we're involved in it or not. What do I mean by that? Every one of y'all is involved in the stock market. How's that? Stock markets make companies viable. The stock market makes companies worth something or not. If you have any insurance, if you ever have any kind of retirement plan, if you have any kind of savings, if you have a job, all that's connected to the stock market. So people buy stocks.
Wait, I thought that was like privately owned businesses don't have all that. I thought it was just for like businesses like where people buy.
Yes. But
like
I have teacher retirement. That is connected to the stock market. I don't do anything with it, but let me do this. Bless you. A stock is a percentage of the company. If I own a company and I want to gain capital, I can sell you parts of my company, and you pay me to have that part of the company, and I can use that money to build my business. And if it grows if my stock goes up in value, then the value of my company goes up. So I break my company down into percentages, little pieces. How much would I want to sell? If I sell 58% of it, what do I no longer have? Complete control of my company. Now the investors have control of my company. So you want to, this is really, really basic. Say I sell 40%. Okay? You're buying a percentage of my company. Each stock represents a little piece of that company. And you buy it and hold on to it, and then hopefully when you sell it, you make money off it. You make more than you bought it for. That's how the stock market works. There's two types of investors. There's speculators and there's investors. If you're an investor, you put it in there and you leave it. And the stock market has a trend. It drops and goes up, but what's the trend here? It's generally going up. You're not guaranteed. You are gambling. So does that kind of make some sense? We'll get more into it later. From what I understand, well, here's the basic premise. If people are buying this stock, let's say this is a particular stock. If people are buying this, what's happening to the price? It's going up because there's a demand for it. If the stock gains a lot of money, should you sell it?
buying the low, selling the high.
Do you know? Because say you buy this stock at $10 a share and all of a sudden it's $20 a share. Well, here's the thing. Tomorrow it might be worth 30. Tomorrow it may be worth 15.
Yeah, putting $10.
Well, I'm just using this as an example. Now, if you study it and watch it and pay attention to it, there are trends and you might recognize stuff, but it's still a gamble. And you still really don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. If people are buying it that means demand is increasing, the price is going up. If people are selling it and not buying it, what's happening to the price? It's dropping, right? Does that make sense? Now this is what, there's a lot of things I don't get about it. Just like people watch football games, they might say, quit running up the middle. I mean, you know, you really understand what's going on. I've heard of Reddit. I don't know what it is. Is it kind of like Twitter or one of those kind of things? It's a computer deal. It's a phone deal.
I think it's more of like an uncensored anything you want.
Okay. It's one of those social media places, right? Okay. I've heard of it.
If you look up a question on your phone, like say you're trying to go, it's usually one of the things on say like Reddit, because like people answer your questions on
There are all kinds of schemes and games you can play in investing. And one of those, which I can't explain this to you, I can say yes, this exists. People bet that this stock is going to drop, so they do some things to try to make money off it. And sometimes they make money, they do some things that's going to go up. Anyway, I'll just read part of it. Shares of video game retailer GameStop, which I know GameStop was a big player in our life 10 years ago. Not in my life, but my house's life. We go to GameStop, we go to Game. I'm like, oh my gosh, wasted money there, you know. Anyway, I bet it's probably not a big deal anymore. And movie theater giant AMC soared to astronomical levels Wednesday as an apparent swarm of ordinary investors, spurred on by a Reddit message board, took on big Wall Street funds that had bet the stock prices would fall. This is not, all right, there's things that are organic and things that are planned. When I say organic, what is that?
It happens.
That just happens, okay? Sometimes people buy stocks and it grows organically, it's real. In this case, it's not real. People got together and planned and say, let's buy all this stock.
Wait, so they bought all that stock to try and keep the investors from making money?
Okay, apparently a group of Wall Street people bet that GameStop was going to continue dropping. I think for the 5 of the last 6 quarters, it's lost money. And I don't know how they do this. I can just say, yes, okay, they do that. And I think some people found that out. They said, well, let's screw this up. And so they started buying GameStop stock. And the price has gone through the roof. And Americans, especially investors, we like winners. And so we like to get in on trends. And if people say, hey, this stock is starting to grow, people jump on the bandwagon. And basically what's happened is AMC and GameStop have, it's not natural that they've grown this much. Does that make sense? People have artificially inflated the value of this stock by buying it. And so what's going to happen in the near future? People are going to start selling it.
Mm-hmm.
The people, it's like it's not like a pyramid scheme, you don't probably know what that is. The people that bought the stock first, whenever this Reddit thing started, they're going to make a killing. The people that bought it today are going to lose their shirt. Because at some point, people are going to start selling, and when they start selling, it's just going to be a downfall. It's GameStop shares more than doubled to $347 a share, and it soared more than 400% this week. So they've grown. That means 100%. That makes sense. It's grown from the time it started, from this thing started, it's grown 400%. It's not real. It's a fake growth. Is that?
So really it's going to mess up that business and everyone's.
They did it on purpose to mess up the Wall Street people that do this for a living, that bet it was going to.
The Wall Street people
Oh,
are
so
doing
they
that.
do it like kind of as a joke, but like we'll show you.
We're going to, yeah.
Okay.
Which, okay, I'm not going to sit here, I don't know anything about the stock market. I know the stock market benefits our economy. Because good companies, strong companies, their stocks tend to grow, and it's a good investment. That's one of the things that keeps our economy okay. You can now, but you used to have to go somewhere to buy stocks. Now you can get your phone out and you can buy stocks. And normal, everyday people can just buy stocks. And I love that, but it does make the market way more volatile. It makes it way more roller coaster because people can just buy and sell a lot easier than they could 50 years ago. It is part of the freedom stuff we got. It's something you have to deal with. But I guess what I'm telling you is, well, there's nothing wrong with the stock market. It is a gamble. There is some smart ways to do it, and there's people that kind of know more than what you do, and they, there's good to listen to people like that. But pretty soon, this bubble's going to burst, and those stocks are going to plummet. And probably a lot of people not involved in either one of these things, the rich inside or the Reddit side, are going to get hurt by it. But it's, you got to have a stove to cook food, but you might burn your hand on it too. That kind of makes sense. So that's, I don't know if that, just want to be aware that's what's kind of going down. There is real growth in the stock market where companies do gain value, but there's also the roller coaster. You got the ride up, you also got the ride down, and it's the opposite. Roller coaster, the ride down is what's fun. Wall Street, the ride down is not fun, and there's corrections. You'll hear the word corrections sometimes, where the market corrects itself, where there's too much growth, and it'll correct itself, but guess what? It's going to bounce back up sometime. That's kind of what's happening. We'll get into some stock market stuff later in the year, but anyway, just want to throw that out there. Now you can be smarter than some, throw that out there to some of your dumb friends sometimes. Oh, the Reddit, the stock market. Oh, the stocks, so they're inflated, it's artificial, it's not. All right. How based is this stuff?
He tried to give me the story, and I was sitting there and I was jumping because I could have made money on it.
Yeah,
Rex is probably
But it's like he wakes up every morning like 3:30.
Yes.
So and he goes, you just have to be able to wake up and be able to try.
It's like anything else. The more you practice it, the more you're around it, and the more you learn, the better you're going to be. But there's still a big gamble with this, no matter how much you know. I worked with a trainer one year, and he used to work the dog track in Houston. I hate to gamble because I hate throwing money away. I hate buying lottery tickets. I think I bought one lottery ticket in my life because I hate giving money away.
I hate doing it with fireworks, man.
Well, at least I kind of get something out of that. If I'm betting, I'd rather light the money on fire because I get something out of that. I can at least watch it burn instead of just handing it over to you. But this guy, he knew some things about gambling, how some of this stuff worked, and he said, I can guarantee you money. If you guys will put $30 on the Kentucky Derby, this is 96, I can guarantee to double your money. And I trusted him. I said, okay, gave him $30.
Never saw him.
I got $32 extra. I got $62. He bet all these little $2 bets. It's like every scenario that could happen, and we made money because he knew what he was doing. I would never go and put money down. And, I hate throwing money away. So, anyway, let's get out what we started yesterday.
Remember we went to that horse race and Chris won like $5,000.
I remember the next day.
Yeah, we won like $5,000 at a horse race. I can't believe that would ever do.
We're going to do something today. We ain't going to get done with this today. I'll stop and give you some time because y'all do a good job of acting like you're paying attention. Playing the game. That's what you got to do, all right. We're going to look at the executive powers that the governor of Texas has. We're not going to do 5 of them. I think we're going to do probably 3 or 4 of them. Is that okay with everybody? Some of y'all don't like that. It's going to bother you, some of y'all don't. It's only right 3 when we got, it says 5 there, but The governor submits a budget to Congress. The governor's office, he'll have people just like the Office of Management and Budget at the president level. They will put together a budget for the state of Texas, submit it to Congress. This spring, Congress is going over that. And they're figuring out what we really need to spend money on. What's gonna happen this summer?
The 30 days.
There'll be a special session. They won't finish school finance, and they'll have to go. Okay? In past years, funding schools has been relatively easier than this year. What has changed, and it isn't sick, what's changed dramatically in the last 3 or 4 years that affects Texas and Texas schools?
People come in. Or houses.
Okay, people coming. No, I did this the other day. People coming from California, why are they leaving California? It's too liberal.
Those California.
They're leaving California because it's too liberal for them. So it's not crazy California people coming to Texas. If they're crazy California people, they ain't coming to Texas. Does that make sense? They might be a little different than us, and I hope they're a little different than us, but they're leaving because taxes are too high. They're coming here because they're not going to come here and say, hey, raise our taxes. You know what I mean? They're coming here because our taxes are low. Now, they might have a little different ideas sometimes, but they're not going to change the tax thing. That's why they're here. What do y'all buy every week, probably? What? Gas. What's happened to gas the last few years? Last few years. I'm not saying the last couple of weeks. It's been the oil and gas industry is down here. How dependent is Texas on the oil and gas industry? There's not as much money in Texas. There's not as much tax revenue in Texas. So funding schools, the cost of funding schools has not dropped, but the amount of money that Texas has to fund schools has dropped. So that little fight's gonna go on. That's why it's gonna take a while this year. They send that budget to Congress. Congress figures it out and submits it. The governor also, Godzilla, now I'm forgetting everything. National Guard. What's the National Guard?
It's the Army.
Okay, it's a branch of the Army, basically the reserves. Now, I'm ignorant in this. I know that every reserve is a National Guard, but the Texas National Guard is a part of the United States military, but it's under the governor's control. The Arkansas National Guard. When we talk about the Arkansas National Guard?
Hurricane.
Last semester, 1958. 58 or 59. Arkansas National Guard got called out by the governor to do what?
Stop the rioters. Protection.
To start the rioters, to block the school. Oh.
The white kid in school.
Little Rock Central High School, Orville Falmouth. Y'all learned that last semester. Governor calls out the National Guard. The governor has control of the National Guard. Last week, what did you hear about Abbott and the Texas National Guard? Or were y'all too busy?
Too busy sleeping.
No, there ain't sleep. You sleep like 4 or 5 hours a night, and then you got stuff to do, right?
Right.
So y'all said 3?
2.
What's going on with Abbott and other governors around the country and their National Guards? What are they trying to call them back from?
It's DC.
Washington, D.C. What's the controversy?
They're staying in the garages.
They're sleeping in parking garages. They're not getting breaks. They're getting sick. And Abbott, I think last week, said, if this is how you're going to treat them, I'm calling them back. Now, the federal government can step in and say, we're going to federalize these troops. But I don't know if that's happened. I think they just asked the governors to send some troops. And now there's like 18 governors saying, we're bringing them back. If they're going to be treated like this, we're bringing them back. So the governor has control of the National Guard and can call them out, implement them, use them, usually for emergencies. Some of y'all said tornadoes, hurricanes. That's usually when we use the National Guard. You know what? I can't remember. I was trying to look up some stuff. don't think, it wasn't in this book, it was in another book. Now I can't remember. Anywho. I know they might represent the state of Texas at things. If there's like an important deal, they might represent the state of Texas or go to something. That's not a big deal. I'm gonna throw this out there. When did y'all actually see Greg Abbott a lot this year? When did y'all see a lot of him?
The mask mandates and stuff.
This spring. Coming out, it was almost, for a while, it was almost daily, at least weekly. Coming out and here's some things, sometimes issuing executive orders or mandates, or here's some things our state's gonna do. Hadn't seen it in a while, but anyway, that's good enough. If I remember anything else or think anything else, we'll throw it in there. Lieutenant Governor. Got Lieutenant Governor. Who's that person like? Vice President. Tell me something you know about the Vice President.
Runs the Senate.
Okay, bangs the gavel in the Senate. Are they a member of the Senate? No, but they bang the gavel. They vote if there's a tie. What's the first thing you know about the Vice President? They replace the president. How did they get that job? Their vice president's not necessarily elected, they're picked by the vice president. They run as a team, they run with somebody. So they replace the executive. They are picked. They run as a team. What about lieutenant governor?
Elected.
Do they replace the governor?
No.
Yes, they do. Rick Perry was lieutenant governor when Governor Bush went out to be president, and he stepped in. Greg Abbott was Rick Perry's lieutenant governor. Okay, not Rick Perry's lieutenant. Was lieutenant governor, and then Rick Perry went on to be Secretary of Energy, I think, under, I guess it was President Trump? I don't remember. Yeah, I think it was President Trump. And then Greg Abbott stepped up there. So they replaced the executive. What else do you think the lieutenant governor does?
Bangs the gavel.
Bangs the gavel in the Texas Senate.
They're elected.
They are elected separately. You run for lieutenant governor. Bless you. And something else I'm going to suggest to you. And you're going to think I'm an idiot because, number one, I'm an adult and I'm suggesting something to you and I'm old and how do you know anything and you ain't my boss. Anyway, y'all been to Austin? How many of y'all been to Austin? Have you been to the Bob Bullock Museum? The one with the big star out front. Once I said museum, most of y'all went, rolled your eyes. You guys have been. Is that a pretty cool museum? It's got stuff. And you can do things. And it is not it's not a boring museum.
Not a reading museum.
It's a 90.
Well, it takes you through, it has stuff from the beginning of Texas and it works its way up to right now. And it has airplanes hanging there. It really, it's not a waste of time. The Bob Bullock Museum was named from Bob Bullock, who was like a career, he was in the Texas Senate and lieutenant governor and Texas politics most of his life. I don't know what he did for a living, but that's what he did for a long time. He was if you were in the South, from 1865 until the late 80s, and you were running for office in Texas, you were a Democrat. Otherwise, you're going to lose. There was no Republican in Texas, ever, until late 80s. He was a Democrat. Now, a Texas Democrat is different than a California Democrat. That's different. They were way more. Yeah, a lot of things flipped around and switched. But he was lieutenant governor when Governor Bush was elected. Governor Bush was a Republican, conservative, and then Bob Bullock was a semi-conservative Democrat. When President Bush ran for president, he picked Bob Bullock as his lead person. In his book, or one book he wrote, President Bush's dad was the president of the United States. He said Bob Bullock was his #1 most important political influence of his life. So they, even though they don't run together, they can work
I mean,
together.
Democrats and Republicans used to get along.
What's that?
I mean, Democrats and Republicans used to get along.
In the 80s,
Is it working?
Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill. Tip O'Neill was the Democratic Speaker of the House. They were the dog and the coyote in the Bugs Bunny cartoons. They'd wake up, they lived at the same place, they'd walk to work together, and they'd punch in, and then the horn would go off, and they'd try to kill each other because the coyote's still on the sheep, and you know the cartoon I'm talking about. Yeah, they hated each other all day, and then at night they'd go eat together and talk. It used to be like that. Yeah, we also used to shoot each other in duels also. So we've had ups and downs in history.
That's how you.
No, that ain't good.
Like the dueling part.
That ain't good. Maybe running quarters. Let's run quarters. Let's have liftoffs and run quarters. See how that goes. All right. The comptroller. I'm gonna what's the word? Deceive myself and know that this is the question you've been waiting for all night. You couldn't sleep last night because you didn't know what a comptroller was. We elect a comptroller. This is one of the, quote, cabinet positions in Texas. This is the state's accountant. They are in charge of paying the bills. They're in charge of the tax money coming in and the payments going out. They keep track of the books. I don't know who our comptroller is anymore. About 20 years ago, it was Carol Keaton Rylander, and her campaign slogan, she had all these commercials. She was kind of funny. Her campaign slogans was "One Tough Grandma." That's all I remember. But the comptroller, businesses have comptrollers, schools have comptrollers. Sometimes they don't call them comptrollers, but they're accountants. Payments, the money going out.
Do we have our?
We call it business officer, financial officer. Yes, we have a person in charge of the bills. They're up in that office over there. But that's a comptroller. Is that an important job? All right, Commissioner of the General Land Office. They are in charge of deeds and land ownership.
Is this the General Land Office?
Yes. Is that important in Texas? It's important anywhere. That's important in Texas. Now, when you buy land, part of the closing cost is somebody has to go back to the courthouse and go through all the records and find out who originally, because like Texas gave away land in the 1830s, and they research back to make sure the person you're buying from actually owns that land. So there's all these records. The General Land Office is in charge of all those records. A deed is the thing that shows who owns the land. So they're in charge of all that. When you buy land, let's say you buy 10 acres, and they find oil under those 10 acres.
You don't know.
Are you getting anything?
You'll get it.
You're getting nothing.
trucks, don't you?
What?
The trucks, right?
You control the top of the land.
So when they drive on your land, they have to pay, but underneath they don't, right?
You can negotiate what you want for them to come over and do. You don't own the mineral rights, right? Somebody else owns that, and they don't sell that. The reason you don't sell mineral rights is, what are you willing to pay for it? It could be worth millions of dollars. It could be worth zero. That makes sense? Because you don't know what it's worth. So no one's willing to sell it, and no one's willing to buy it. You're looking at somebody who used to be an owner of mineral rights. Did you know that? Did you remember that? When my dad died, it had been passed down to him. He owned a lease, I don't know how many acres, like a 100-acre lease in Clay County or Wichita, somewhere up there, somewhere by the Red River. Right? And me and my brother split it. And we got a letter. I didn't know. I mean, I remember my dad talking about it. And that, once it didn't make money for years, and then they started fracking, and he started making a little money off of it. And that when we got a letter saying that we were now going to get royalties, that it was producing again. And so I was like, oh, right. Problem solved. We're now going to get bills paid off. We're going to have a savings account. We got a check for $100. Which is a check for $100, okay? And about every 2 or 3 months, we get a check for $100. So, financial trouble still sticking around. What happened when the price of oil and stuff started dropping? We started getting a check every 4 months, or it didn't come very often. And then we got a letter from somebody, some oil deal, that said, "Hey, we want to buy your royalty. We want to buy your mineral rights. We were gonna buy, I think it was like $2,700. We'll buy your mineral rights for $2,700." Now at the time, we were in need of some cash because somebody I know wasn't looking around and kind of ran into another coach's vehicle, and we had to pay for the door, and we didn't have any money. And I looked at little Christy and I said, "Okay, it would take us, the way things are going, about 4 or 5 years to make this much money off this well. And I don't see that it's ever going to be producing $1,000 a month." So we sold our mineral rights. And we asked my brother, first she called my brother and said, we're looking to sell this, do you want to buy it? He goes, "I wish I could. That's my kid's inheritance." And I was like, you may know something I don't. I don't see that ever becoming, you're sort of in pools of money or anything. But I did sell the mineral rights. Stay with me now here. I know you think this is crappy and stupid. The land office deals with mineral rights. Is that important in Texas? Yes. Now the bad news is they've learned how to drill from over here, so they don't have to come on your property. They got to be on someone's property, but they can now directional drill and go that way and that way, and they can go and back that way. They can go all kinds of ways and just you don't have to get on your property to get oil from under your deal. They put a pipeline in our old place one time. And they did fix up our driveway and fix our fence and stuff. It was a natural gas pipeline. And they said, we can put a tap on there for you. Which meant we could put we were building a house, we could put our whole house on natural gas. Tap into that and not have a gas bill. I said no. Can you think why I would say no?
What if it dries out?
What's that?
I said, what if it goes out?
It doesn't flow all the time. And if it's ever not flowing, we can't hope the gas works. Gas has to work. So we didn't do that. But it's there for you if you want to. Land ownership, mineral rights. What's another thing bigger than mineral rights in Texas that has to do with property? What do we all have to have?
What do we all have to have? Air.
Yes. Water. Water rights. Does Texas have a lot of water?
Yeah.
No, we don't have a lot of water.
Got all the lakes.
There's no natural lakes. Very few rivers, and most of the rivers, most of the year, is like little trickles. There are some springs.
Yeah.
We're getting more and more and more people. We got animals, and there's no more extra water than what we already have. So if I have some, let's say I have some, I don't know, I got something going on my property where I use all kinds of water. Okay? I drill my little well,
Greenhouse.
and I hit groundwater. Is this just water on my property?
No.
Where's the water at? All over. If I suck all kinds of water out of here, does it affect other people?
Yes.
So, when there's questions about how much water an individual or a business or a company or a place is using, you go here to discuss the water rights. I mean, I have rights to water under my property, but so does my neighbor, and so does my neighbor, and so does my neighbor. So they deal with mineral rights, they deal with water rights, they deal with land ownership. Let's see. We're gonna do 3 more. That's it. On your phone, look up what percentage of the Texas budget comes from the federal government. Look that up there. How much Texas state revenue comes from the federal government? Might have to word it weird, or there should pop up something.
35.5%.
Okay, that sounds about right. So of all of our revenue, is anybody else finding that? Anybody else see something like that?
32.6.
Okay, let's say 30, 35%. Say 10 years from now, somebody, maybe even somebody you've known all your life, is funding 30% of your life. What do they get to do?
Own 35% of you.
They get to tell you what you're doing and what you're not doing. Right? They have control over you. If you want control of yourself, you get to go out and pay for everything. When I was 13. No, I was 12. Fixing 13. My dad, I was mowing yards. And he bought the mower and I was paying him back. And something happened and he said, well, as long as, because he still controlled me because he owned the mower. I hadn't paid the mower off yet. He said, well, as long as I own that mower, I can tell you, if you get money from me, if you owe me money, then I can tell you what you're going to do with that money or whatever. And so the next day, I walked downtown and got a job at Rollins Monuments. I was going to make my money because I was going to be in charge of my stuff. If it's mine, I get to control it or decide it. Because the federal government funds Texas, 35% of it, they get to tell us how to calculate catch. They get to put parameters on that. They get to put limits, so they get to say, here's what that money's spent on. Does that make sense? If we don't want the federal government doing that, what do we not do? Don't take their money. Just like life.
Do you think that'll happen?
No.
What if it's bad?
What happens is, okay, do we need bridges and roads in Texas? Are there a lot of crappy bridges and crappy roads in Texas? What is it? Fort Worth, North Fort Worth. They've been building that road since I was in high school. 1980s, mid-80s. They've been building that road since then. Federal government says you got to do this or else we ain't giving you the highway money. And Texas needs the highway money, so we say, yeah, go ahead. Okay, we'll listen to what you say. At the Railroad Commission, if you actually know what this is, don't answer. What do you think the Railroad Commission does? They are in charge of railroads. Is that a big deal today? Not like it was. But that's not what they're really in charge of. They are in charge of railroads, but they are in charge of oil and gas production. How important is that in Texas? So if somebody's running for railroad commission, do you need to do some research and see if this is a person you want to vote for? Because that's really important. Whether or not you're involved in oil and gas, we all are. Wise County, every one of our occupations is dependent on oil and gas. If you own a store and the oil field is dropping, are you making money? If the oil field is booming, you're making money. I get paid by taxes, which Texas means oil and gas. I haven't got fired yet. We'll see. The reason for this. One reason, I have an educated reason and I have a non-educated reason. One reason is, back in the old days, when oil and gas was first got going, they didn't have pipelines. The only way to transport large amounts of oil and gas was on railroads. And so they just, because that was what the railroads were pulling around, they said, well, let the Railroad Commission handle this. Another reason that it's not educated, but I just put two and two together. Texas, in the 1800s, railroads bought up millions and millions of acres of land in Texas. What did they need land for? Build the railroads, but also there's something else. What did railroads back then have to run? What's that? Coal. What did the coal do? Burnt and heated up the... What made them go? Steam, which comes from water. What does Texas not have? So they had to have water stations every 10 miles, just like we have to have gas stations every 10 miles. The only way to get enough water to make the railroads go was buy up all this land and get as much water as they could. And then some, they found oil in that. Back then you didn't have, worry about mineral rights. And the old railroads controlled a lot of the mineral rights. That's an uneducated guess. It was true that they transported oil and gas around, so they put it under Railroad Commission. If there is a meeting about fracking, if people have a problem with their water catching on fire, you ever seen that? Well, who do you contact?
Railroad.
A Railroad Commission. And the Railroad Commission will have town halls and meetings. And if you want a new gas lease, you go to the Railroad Commission. Did you learn something today? Look at that. Wasn't a waste of day. Last one. Besides 35% from the federal government, we get 65% of our revenue from where? Okay, we have sales tax. What happened to that this year? Yeah, people weren't. There was a couple months there where people weren't really buying a lot of stuff. I don't know for a fact. I haven't researched. I'm gonna guess sales tax dropped this year for Texas, or it changed. I'm gonna guess it changed. Any other? Y'all aren't familiar with this really. Property tax. We do not have a state income tax in Texas. Don't ever vote for that. Don't ever let that happen. The flip side is we have really high property tax compared to other places in the country. They have state income tax. We don't, but we've got this. Or there's some things you can do to lower your property taxes. What's some things you might consider? Well, it is different, in some areas. Well, it depends on the school district too. Yes, if you, maybe a business, if you do something with your property, besides just live on it, you could get some tax write-offs. Okay? But if you own like half an acre, you can't do that. You'd have to own more. What's that? I think you have to have at least, I'm talking out of my butt here, but I think at least 2 acres. You can't have, like we got goats. You can't. We don't own no property now. All right, thank you very little. Appreciate it. Huh? This one?
Every time I walk up,
One of the most proud moments of my life was when the little Titan said, "We're gonna do those in the name of Earl." I said, "I will too, Johnson." Earl is the black one. Campbell's the white.
What kind of goats are they?
They're the little Nigerian dwarf ones.
They're about like yay big, but they're about yay
They're not.
big. Right as soon as they eat, they run to you. I'm like, oh my gosh, because they're like it's not like they're such a stomach. This big. I'm like, oh my god.
That is really That is why the boys wore Longhorn jerseys when they were little. That's why I wear Longhorn. That's why I'm wearing this right now. So
Didn't it dry seem like
y'all might eat the sausage. Go get this sausage, you know,
dirt now?
Well, like, we should have done maybe outside we shoot the first time they both just looked out. We shoot again and they put.
We got about 2-3 minutes.
It's-
You say you're going to, we got 2 minutes.
Yeah, my legs hurt.
That's your way, yeah. We got this one in the NFL.
Talked about following up. Yeah.
Where do I go?
Yeah.
Bring them on, what are people now?
I'm thinking like
People over the
Well, now I'm every day. He's good.
Where are y'all working out at?
I did
That's a little cute, that's fine, huh? What time do you go?
Like the first time we went, it was like 5:30.
I forgot what I did. James Wood was having some like contest day where we had to draw like I forgot what happened.
You need to give me that there.
No, I didn't. I don't remember that.